Podcasting from the heart of the Gator Nation in Alachua County, Florida, this is Extension Cord, a podcast of IFAS Extension Alachua County where we plug in and bring IFAS Extension to life. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Taylor Clem with IFAS Extension in Alachua County, and today I have Amanda Pittman and Martha Maddox here. Amanda is our 4-H agent, and Martha is our family and consumer science agent here in Alachua County. And recently we had a hurricane preparedness program called Hunker Down. And we felt that it was going to be important to kind of do a podcast follow-up with that because Hunker Down, hurricane preparedness, you know, being that we are in the middle of the hurricane season, it's really important that we're always talking about how do we make our families prepared for any of the situations that arise, you know, during hurricane season, especially here in Florida, because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So I want to thank you all for coming in and taking part in this recording today.
Well, thanks, Taylor, for inviting us because, you know, hurricane season is something that we just can't get complacent on. We've got to be on top of it. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the middle of a pandemic like COVID-19, we're already at a stress level. Supplies are, you know, you go to the store and it's like, oh, I can't get this, I can't get that. And what the deal is with toilet paper, I'm not for sure, but you know, toilet paper and paper towels, and especially some of the things like hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes that we need, they're not there. Right. Or if they're there, you find them one time and the next time you don't. So you've got to, during this, we've got to stay healthy, we've got to stay calm, we've got to make sure we're connected with everything, and we've got to stay informed more than anything in the world. And so we've got to start preparing now because when a hurricane hits, Amanda, if I told you, hey, did you hear on the weather that a hurricane's hitting tomorrow? And you're not prepared, what's going to happen?
You're going to be in trouble. You're not going to be sleeping very much that night.
No. And your animals, you know, not only do you have to take care of yourself, because I touched on your home and all like that, and you touched on the pets, and Taylor touched on your landscape, and man, you'd be working all night, wouldn't you, Taylor, to get everything
there's no way you
get
it done. No, yeah. It'd be impossible. So, like, when we did the program, we had it broken up in like 3 pieces. Martha talked about like preparing inside the home, important documents, food, water safety. Amanda talked about how to prepare animals, whether it be like livestock, horses, dogs, cats, etc. And I talked about landscape preparedness. And one of the biggest things, and Martha, you just mentioned about it, is just you can't wait for the hurricane to be on the horizon in order to start preparing, because it's impossible to get things ready in time to do so. Because, I mean, a lot of us, we've all experienced hurricanes before. I know everyone likes to talk about the 2004 season when we had 3 hurricanes come right through the center of the state.
Not if you worked them, no.
No. So that's usually the, you know, one year that a lot of people think about, because it was, 3 hurricanes in a month?
Yes.
A month and a half or something.
It was devastating for the Extension family. That's where we all stood together. And I was in Arcadia working when that hurricane came through. We went to Arcadia, and that's what we do is we go to each other's, you know, aid and stuff. But, you know, back on a personal note, you know, you've got to have your supplies ready, especially for your house.
Yes.
And you've got to have non-perishable stuff. And you need them in kits, because if someone comes and says you need to evacuate, you don't have time to grab your important documents. And that's something I really want to say right now, Taylor, is your important documents. This past hurricane that came through, Hurricane Laura, it impacted my home state, and one of my very close friends lost their home, and they were not at home. If they had been, it'd have been a totally different outcome. And that's one of the things that we talked about after the fact is you never know when something's going to hit. And if someone says evacuate, you need your important documents. And when I say important documents, and these are things that people take for granted till after the fact, your homeowner's insurance, your birth certificates, your marriage license, any divorce decrees, adoption papers, information on your home, credit cards. How many credit cards do you have? Do you have information if you need to get a hold of those credit card people, because scams are high during this time. Fraud is high. And so have all this information in a waterproof container and have it, where you can grab it to go.
Right.
And I just want to add on to that too, Martha. A lot of times we think about the documents associated with our family, but we also got to think about our four-legged or maybe two-legged family members when they're health certificates, because if you're traveling across state lines or boarding them somewhere, you're going to need those things and you don't want to leave them behind. And so one thing I really recommend that I've done personally is that we've taken all of our documents and put them in a travel case that's a fireproof box. And so it is very easy in an emergency, because sometimes, we're lucky here in Florida that we usually don't get tornadoes. That usually it's a hurricane and something we can prepare for a few days out. But for an emergency, it's something we can grab and get out the door in a few minutes.
Absolutely.
But you may have that spin-off, because that's what this happened to spin off. Amanda, I've got a question for you, because I know you have to have Coggins test papers. Now, in case of an emergency, can you get a Coggins test? How long does it last for, the paperwork and all like that?
Yeah, so most paperwork on animals is annual, so it lasts for a year. And a lot of times, too, if it's a really devastating storm that's heading our way, FDACs and other state agencies will allow for there to be kind of you can get across state lines without those, but you don't want to be intermixing your animals that don't have vaccines with different populations of animals. You're kind of asking for another disaster in a different way. And so you want to make sure you have all those up to date and do them annually. And I suggest we always do ours in June. So I know that they're very much up to date right before hurricane season starts. And we just know that every June is when we have to do all of our annual paperwork for our animals and our livestock and have them all together in one spot. A lot of people I've seen too, if they have multiple animals, like if you've 4 horses, they have one that's due in June, one that's due in December, one in January, and one in April.
Wow.
And that's one way to really get off track. And so even if you have your dogs, make sure all of their stuff kind of gets to where it's in the same month so you can keep track of it easier.
Absolutely.
So that's like humans' immunization papers and our medicine. You need to make sure you've got your medicine up to date.
Absolutely.
And enough on hand.
Yeah, and one way that what we do is, we're talking about hurricane preparedness and putting all that paperwork. In my home, we have all of our important paperwork kind of in a safe and everything like that. But the stuff that if we needed to leave quickly, we have in a small other little lockbox within there that I can just open up the safe, grab it, and then all those important documents are kind of in one space together, and it really helps us out in that situation.
Well, one of the most popular questions that I get when I do this workshop face-to-face is people ask me, you're telling me that you want me to write down my credit card information, because that's what we tell them. Write down your credit card, the number, the information you need, the number to the agency and all of that. And it's in there with my Social Security card and all this stuff. And I said, yes, but you can also put this on a flash drive and have it password protected.
Yeah, some type of encryption on it.
Yes, and that way you don't have it. So you don't have to have your credit card information there with your Social Security information and stuff. But I would highly suggest scanning or somehow having copies of your birth certificate, your Social Security card, and stuff like that on that flash drive that is encrypted.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, just from what we talked about, you could tell that this goes back to the point of you can't do this that day of. And I know that that's one of the things that you always see is a certain level, I guess, of complacency that's associated with hurricanes. I know that with a lot of Floridians, you've experienced hurricanes before, there is a certain level of complacency of oh, it's okay. People say, oh, it's just a Category 1 or it's just a tropical storm. Yep. There's still a level of preparedness that you need to expect, because in a situation, especially with Hurricane Laura, it was not expected to hit as hard as it was, and it quickly grew and developed unexpectedly to a stronger hurricane. But
Right.
I think that really comes back to, you don't know which directions the hurricanes are going to go. You don't know how strong they're going to be. And the only thing you know is that you can do is how do you prepare? And, we talked about documents, especially, our personal documents with ourselves. What do we need, as well as documents that we need for our animals in case we need to cross state lines. And then even in the class, Amanda, you mentioned vaccination records for your pets, but also if you're microchipped animals, have that documentation available too, correct?
Absolutely. So whether you're leaving your animals at home if you're evacuating, because sometimes it's just not possible to take them with you, like if they're livestock animals, or if you have a dog or cat or a bird or something like that, you want to make sure that you have multiple forms of ID on them. So whether that's putting ear tags braided into their mane or some tape, caution tape braided into their mane with your name and information on it, or I've even seen people putting fingernail polish on hooves, writing down their information as well, or livestock markers on them. And microchipping is available for livestock animals as well, not just household pets.
Yeah.
And so you want to have those things and have all that documentation with your other important papers. But then also something that people kind of forget to do is make sure that you take a current picture with you and your animals, just in case something happens and you have proof of like, this is my animal. If you do need to go pick them up from a shelter or you need to get them from an undisclosed location type of a thing.
Yeah. And speaking of shelters, I think it's going to be important for us to note that we're county employees with Alachua County, so we help provide support to our county shelters. And I would encourage anybody that as part of hurricane preparedness, make sure that you know your county's shelter locations or how to find out that information. Alachua County, we have that emergency management department, I think is the actual name of it, but they have a webpage. And you can sign up to get notifications, and you can get text or email saying which shelters are open, when they're going to open, where the pet-friendly ones are. Because we have, when Hurricane Laura was approaching, I had a couple people contact me about, how do I find out this information regarding shelters in case I need one, which I thought was a very proactive step, So I just gave them that information, and that they then at that moment knew, how do I find that? So I encourage anybody to make sure it's locate that.
And one thing I wanted to add about that with shelters is that if you're planning on bringing your animal with you to a shelter, there's a really fantastic website called Bring Fido that lists off all the counties in Florida that have, every single county is listed on there, and it says what their shelter policy is for animals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because sometimes that changes year to year.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure that you stay up to date on that.
And I want to add, too, with COVID-19 going on, you need to make sure what are the changes in those shelters. And you need to talk to them and find out if there's any special needs you want. And also make sure when you're packing that emergency kit this year to have 2 face masks per person for individuals 2 and older. And I want to go back to something Amanda said, and also have some hand sanitizer with you that's 60% alcohol. This takes care of you. But Amanda, you talked about pictures of your animals and stuff. Well, this is something that's wonderful and you really need to do, because go through your home and with a camera or a video camera or both, and video and take pictures room by room. And this way you've got documentation of furniture, stuff like that, big appliances, TVs, big equipment. Take the barcode where you can look and see, because if you have to file a claim, you can't stop and think about it. You don't remember, you're in a state of shock at this time, and this helps that. And also, not only with this flash drive and this material, and I'm going to say this very cautiously, if you have a trusted, and trusted is the key word, and we hate to use that word, but a trusted family or friend member that you can give an additional copy of this information to, whether it be on the flash drive or hard copy, this is really good, because if, in the worst case scenario, something did happen to you and, you were in the hospital and you needed this information, that friend or family member would have it.
Yeah.
And can I add on to that as well, Martha, is, you want to make sure with your animals, no matter what type they are, that you have a written down list of the things that they need and maybe their allergies or special considerations for them. So that way, if something happens to you, that someone else can take care of your pet. If that's leaving them at a shelter or if an emergency happens, and this is even outside of hurricanes, to have this list of how to take care of your animals if, God forbid, something happens to you.
Right, and we've been kind of talking in circles about what this and that, but the main thing that you need to have when it comes to you is you need to have a 3-day supply of water, and that is a gallon per person. And if you have medical equipment that needs
a gallon per
water,
person per day?
Per day,
Yep.
yes. And if you have medical equipment that needs it, or you have some kind of health issue that you need more water, you need to, accommodate for that. Really, a 7-day supply on hand is not bad, and that's with medicine, food, and everything. And I know we all love our munchies, and especially that's comfort food, junk food during, and yes, I'm saying that, Taylor and Amanda, during the stress hurricane thing. But stop and think. Most of that chips, peanuts, and all are salty, unless you get non-salty. Take into consideration, if you're packing stuff like this, you really need to have more water. Yeah. So take into consideration and try to pack things that, yes, are comfort food, because during this time we need comfort food. But don't forget to pack that can opener, because manual can opener, not electric, because if you don't have your can opener with your 3-day supply of food and you have canned food, you can't open it. Make sure you have a propane gas for your gas tank. Also, the first thing I do when I hear a hurricane is coming, I go and I turn my refrigerator down from 40. I usually turn it down to about 35, and I turn my freezer down from 0 lower. And if my freezer isn't full, I get some old crumpled newspaper and put in there to fill it up, or I get some milk containers or something and fill them halfway full of water. So the ice will freeze. I can use that later. And then
it can help keep things cool.
Right. Yeah. And know where you can get dry ice and know how to handle it, and have some gloves to handle dry ice with when it comes time.
Martha, I know during our webinar you got some questions about how water can be stored.
Yes.
If it can be in plastic bottles, and if after a while the water gets old because of leakage from the plastic, or if they can be stored in glass. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You need to make sure, whether it's water or food, you need to store it in a cool place. A lot of people store their foods and their water bottles in their hot garages. If your garage is not air conditioned and your temperature in there is reaching in the Florida weather or anywhere up in the hundreds and 120s, you really don't need to be storing it there. But you can store it in glass, you can store it in the plastic, but make sure if you've got it in plastic, it's not in a lot of direct sunlight and high heat. And also with your glass bottles, make sure if you're filling up glass bottles to use that they are sanitized, disinfected, and really it's best if you're going to use for human consumption that you buy the bottled water and use the other for to flush your toilets or to clean with.
Right. And, speaking of food and water, Amanda, going back to pets, how much supply should we make sure that we have for our pets handy?
So that's it depends question. So I would say as long as you can, but you got to make sure that you store it in a very much a moisture controlled area, a lot like what Martha's talking about. So if you can store feed for up to 2 weeks in an airtight container that's not going to get wet, that's fantastic. But if you can only store a few days, I understand that too, because the big thing is you don't want animal feed to get moldy. I know a lot of our 4-H'ers have chickens, and a lot of birds are really susceptible to different types of molds, as well as other types of livestock. So you do not want to make sure that you want to make sure the feed that you're giving your animals is clean and fresh, just like it would be on any other day, and does not have mold. And make sure you check it, because with the humidity levels, it's a huge risk. So that's something you can be thinking about now, about places that you can store it, maybe getting some airtight containers for them. I know we have big trash cans that we store our feed in, and that works really well in a very particular place. So think about, too, with livestock animals, a lot of times if you're having to pull them off of pastures after the storm passes because it's so wet, you might be putting them in areas where they need other types of forage like hay. And that's also something else that you don't want to get moldy. That's very easy to get moldy if you leave it in a place where it can get wet. Right. So it's just thinking about now, kind of going back to the main theme of just being prepared. Yeah. Thinking about now, man, where can I store this? Where can I get this? If I had, to go get feed today, would I run out of it? I know we saw a lot of that at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah. Tractor Supply ran out of a lot of animal feed very quickly because people were panic buying. So, I would get as much as you can reasonably with keeping it safe.
Correct.
And I want to go to your mold question because this is a question I get a lot with food. Oh, my jelly or my cheese has mold on it. I can just scrape that off and eat it. And I'm like, wrong, because the mold spores are in that product. You may not see them with your bare eyes, but take them under a microscope and you can see them. So I assume that that's the same thing with feed. If you see mold on your feed, you don't feed that whole sack. It's gone.
It's not worth the risk.
Yeah. I want to, when you're talking about securing things, I want to bring up the importance of, wind-related damage, because so much of the stuff that we do is, if you have animals, livestock outside, you're going to have equipment. If you're living on a farm, you're going to have equipment there, small sizes to large sizes. It's going to be important to secure everything that you have outside, tie it down, put it into an interior space. Because of that wind, from a hurricane or a storm. Correct. It can blow that who knows where, and then that can end up being a potential threat to anybody that's outside because it's just debris related to it, whether it be associated with flooding within water or if it be a projectile being thrown through the air. So it's very important to think that everything that you have outside, can you safely secure it down to the ground, secure it in somewhere? But if it can essentially fly away pretty easily, lawn furniture, trampolines, any utensils or gardening utensils, farming equipment that's outside, it's important to get it inside or secured safely.
That's a good point, Taylor. And you being our horticulture agent, I've got a question for you. I've got all these herbs and I've got these plants that are in pots. What am I going to do with them? And also, my landscape, certain plants I've got, how can I protect that during a hurricane, or can I?
So, you can do a lot of protection for stuff that you have in your landscape. So anything in containers, bring them inside. If you have like a garage space or a barn, a shed, you can take them in there, and you're just getting them out of the wind. Hanging baskets, don't forget hanging baskets, because those do fly away.
Really? Flying baskets?
They disappear rather quickly. So anything that you have in containers or pots or hanging baskets outside, get them inside. They'll be fine for the time that the storm has to pass. Get them just nice and secure. With a lot of our landscape shrubs, there's certain things that you can do. Usually they're smaller. They're going to be really resilient. They're not going to be a big issue. Our biggest concern is anything affiliated or associated with our trees. So regular pruning and maintenance of our trees is going to help make sure that our trees are strong and have a higher wind resistance. So there's certain tree species that we know that are going to have a lower wind resistance. Like we looked at some of the data during some of our hurricanes, and we can say, that they have a higher chance of falling over. But our most wind resilient or wind resistant trees, rather, are like live oak, cabbage palms. Pretty much a lot of our native trees are going to have a higher wind resistance. Not all of them, but most of them do. But it's going to be important that if you have them in your landscape, make sure that you're doing regular pruning, best management practices, because essentially what you're doing is you're removing the dead or dying material, any branches that are rubbing against one another. You're creating a strong tree. And with that strong tree, it has that resistance to the wind, as well as it has a slightly thinner canopy, and it allows the wind to pass through a little bit better, versus being just like a big sail and getting tossed back and forth all over the place. So, talking about preparedness, you got to do this regularly throughout the year. If you need to hire somebody, make sure you're hiring an ISA certified arborist to do work, because pruning trees and managing trees can be very, very dangerous. So only do something that you feel comfortable with, because outside of that, it's just, you need if you're not comfortable, I would not do it at all, because a falling branch can be life-threatening to anybody. So call an ISA certified arborist. You can go onto the webpage, treesaregood.org/find an arborist. And that's just an international online directory of certified arborists, and you can end up finding, where you specifically live, anywhere throughout Florida or United States.
Right. And
it'll show you all the arborists that can come and do work in your landscape. But it's going to be important that you do that not leading up to the hurricane, because that's when everybody's saying, "Oh, I have that tree I've been meaning to take down," and a hurricane.
The price might be more too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then an arborist is going to probably be like,
don't have time.
I don't have time,
yeah.
And that's the big thing. And even post hurricanes, a lot of arborists, they're out helping clean debris. They're helping clean roadways. A tree that's fallen in your backyard is going to be very low priority to a lot of people. Yeah. So it's making sure that you start early. A lot of trees, if they're strong and healthy in the landscape, any damage they can typically recover from pretty quickly. So that's our biggest concern, is mitigating wind damage associated with those trees, and regular maintenance is very important.
So the main thing that we've been talking about today, and if people are wanting to find the information, they can go to our IFAS Extension Alachua County webpage and find some of the links. And also, you have our webinar that we posted, Hunker Down, on our webpage, and there's a lot of information and links there. But the main thing is start preparing your plants, get your personal kits, get your documents, and get your pet supplies all in place ahead of time. And Amanda, speaking of pets, I know for your kids, you want to take some extra toys and books and stuff like that to keep them entertained. Mm-hmm. And I know if you had to evacuate with your fur friends, those dogs are used to their toys, right?
Oh, yes. So we would bring all their tennis balls and blankets and their comforts from home. And we would really do the same for our horses, too. They all kind of prepare you well for children, I think. Because you pack everything you could possibly need to go with them. And maybe that's just how I was taught. But whenever we go somewhere, our trailer's pretty full of anything we could possibly need. And that's kind of how we look at, if we ever had to evacuate. And that's maybe a good point to bring up too, that, a lot of people, and I mean, I'm personally guilty of it as well, is you wait till the very last minute to decide if you really, really have to evacuate. And here in Gainesville, we're really lucky that we're in the middle of the state, not on the coastline. Mm-hmm. And I grew up on the coastline near St. Augustine. And thankfully, we never had to evacuate. But if you do have to evacuate, or you're thinking about it, you want to make that decision with animals at least 72 hours out. You don't want to be waiting until the day before or even 2 days before, because the last thing you want to be doing is sitting on the highway with a trailer or with pets as well. So, if you're even thinking about it or considering it, just go ahead and make that call 3 days out to go somewhere. That would be one of my huge recommendations. And I didn't want to leave the podcast either without talking about wind damage and kind of the different things to think about and considerations with animals. Is, a lot of people think too that the safest place for their animals or outside animals is in a barn or in a dog kennel or something like that, and that's absolutely not true. I know it might make us feel better to have them pampered inside, but the risk of that building falling down on them or something flying in there or lightning hitting it and fire sparking or something like that is way higher than them being hurt out in the field. I know that's harder for us to wrap our minds around, but it is true, and anyone who's been around livestock for years will tell you that as well. So, make sure you put them outside and that they're ID'd if they are livestock animals. Mm-hmm. And, talking about preparation weeks and months before, make sure that you're shoring up your fences, and if there's any big trees or water oaks that are near your fence line, it may be a good time to go ahead and clean those up, because, you put them out in the pasture, well, the tree falls on it, you have the risk of your animals leaving your property. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of this comes down to, too, talking about trampolines flying or trees coming down, is being a good neighbor. So it's not just thinking about your own property and your own animals and your own family, but also, what could happen, if from your negligence to your neighbors or the people around you, if you don't take this seriously and prepare for a potential hurricane.
Yeah.
Right, and you also talked about evacuating. And if you go back and look at Hurricane Michael, we live in the middle of the state, but I remember Dean Place sitting in a meeting and he said, just think, we are the same distance off the coast as Mariana was that got hit. Mm-hmm. And would you have thought the hurricane would have traveled there? Would I have thought growing up in Arkansas that a hurricane would have hit through there? And so we're seeing the hurricane winds stay at a high rate traveling across states now. And so take evacuation serious. Things can be replaced.
Absolutely.
Lives cannot.
Absolutely. Your family,
yes.
Your health, health, safety, welfare.
Yes.
That is of utmost priority. So if
yes.
you need to get out of town for a few days, let it pass. Get out of town a few days. Yeah. Stay ahead of the crowds if you need to evacuate, so you don't sit. Because one of the conversations that we had is during evacuation. What do you do with gas?
Yeah. And have a map in your car.
Yeah.
Know the back roads. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I can say. My husband, when we moved down here, he was a Floridian from here, and he was taking all these back roads. And the first time I went back home, my daughter says, "Which route are we taking?" And I said, we're going to go this most direct route, because I can tell you 13 different ways to get back home that we went, all these back roads. But I've learned those, and those are really great, because when a wreck happens on I-75 or, I-10, I know which back road to kick off on. So have a current map. Don't have an outdated map. Have a current map, because your GPS may not always work.
And you may want to make sure that you're saving batteries on some of your electric devices.
Batteries.
Yeah.
Have some gas buildup. But Taylor, one thing we need to really talk on is the number one cause of home deaths during hurricanes is generators. Mm-hmm. If you're going to use a home generator, do not put your generator in the house. You do not really put it in a garage unless it is very, very well ventilated. Mm-hmm. The generator needs to be outside to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, because this is one of the number one killers, is carbon monoxide poisoning. And if you have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, make sure you have extra batteries. Make sure those batteries are working.
Yeah, make sure and test your detectors, especially those carbon monoxide detectors.
And have extra gas, and store your gas in a safe place that is well ventilated. Mm-hmm. Transporting it in vehicles, make sure it's in the back of a vehicle where it's the open air. But take precaution with those generators. And like I said, make sure you've got extra gas for that generator and also for your vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Martha, we had questions when we were talking about evacuation during our webinar about if people should bring extra gas with them in their vehicle while they are evacuating. Can you talk about that a little bit?
If you're in a pickup truck, yes, you can take a can or two of gas. But if you're in a car, we really don't recommend that, because the fumes of it. And also, too, if you have a wreck, then there's more gas there, and depending on where you get hit and all like that. But you need to take into considerations, Amanda, make sure you have a full tank. Keep a full tank at all times. The minute they say that hurricane's hitting, go get in line, because number one, gas prices are going to start jumping. Number two, you're going to set in line, and how much gas are you going to waste setting in line?
And if you're evacuating, do not wait until your fuel light comes on.
When you evacuate, make sure you've got a full tank. And my family laughs at me, but a half a tank, I'm hunting a gas station, because I want to make sure I've got plenty of gas.
Yeah, absolutely. And luckily, part of emergency management with the state, they do pretty well at making sure that we have gas coming in during evacuation periods, but still can be very difficult to find gas. Last time we had a hurricane, it ended up being a tropical storm. I can't remember which one it was. It actually came over Alachua County.
Yeah.
It was difficult to find gas. If you were within Gainesville, it was very difficult to find gas. And I found gas actually out in Trenton. is where I was able to find it.
Well, and I'm going to switch to clothing because this is really important because, in Florida, we love our flip-flops, sir. And you need to make sure you have a good pair of boots or shoes that have, protection of your feet because you never know what kind of debris you're going to be in. And also, I know people, look at you and say long sleeves, but have you some long sleeve shirts and pants. Because if you're working in an area where there has been some disaster, you need to protect your legs and your arms.
Absolutely.
And
especially
sunscreen and bug spray.
Bug spray, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. After the storm, we think about just the emergency and, in the middle of the storm, what's going to happen, but we don't hardly think about the after effects of it. And bugs are a huge thing that happen after the storm, and especially that's where you want to make sure that your animals are up to date on vaccines because there'll be usually a large mosquito population that comes through. So you want to make sure that that's another reason to have your vaccines up to date and such. Something.
But the main thing, Amanda, is just to stay calm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the best way to stay calm is be prepared.
Yeah.
Don't wait. And if you know all your ducks are in a row,
excuse me,
you know that you'll be fine. Your family will be fine.
Yeah.
Check in on your friends. Make sure your friends go that extra mile. Is your neighbor okay? Are they set up? If you have the ability to do so, other family that might be somewhere else, and always say, what can I do for you? If my landscape is ready to go and there's a hurricane coming, go to your neighbor's yard. What can I do to help you out? Make sure you're prepared because that helps you out, and also just make sure you have a good neighbor.
And also, speaking of family too, make sure that your family, especially I know this from having, and Taylor, you probably do too, from having a lot of out-of-state family.
Yeah. Tell
them, I love you, I care about you, but this is our contact because during a storm, the lines are down. We don't want to overcrowd and overload these lines. So-and-so, Amanda is my family contact.
Yeah.
So if you can't get a hold of me, call Amanda because Amanda's going to be the one that I'm calling. She's the one that I'm going to be giving all the information to. And make sure they know that. But then also on our part, make sure we do contact and we keep that family up to date.
Absolutely, because they'll be worried to death. And it's as simple as, because when I've one time I've had to do something very similar where I've had to stay in contact with my family. It wasn't an emergency situation, but I didn't have a way to charge my phone. It was when I was in the Grand Canyon. And what I would do is I turn my phone on for a second, and if I had service, I just text my mom saying, I'm good. And then that's all that was needed. So, and that took 2 seconds. I turned my phone off, and it would preserve my battery. Because I didn't have one of you could always get, for phones, those really fancy solar panel chargers, but that's not always necessary.
And have an extra battery, and also a car charger and stuff like that. That is very, very important.
So, as we conclude this podcast, what would be your just nugget of information if you're going to tell somebody if you need to be hurricane prepared and ready? Amanda, what would you say?
So I would say ask yourself right now, if a hurricane came this weekend, would you be prepared or not?
Yeah.
And if that gives you a little bit of panic, then you should probably start getting prepared. And, that goes, we've talked about, wind damage and picking up stuff. We've talked about food and water and having that prepared. But, simple things such as having a first aid kit handy as well. And also just some tools, hammer, screwdriver, some basic things that you might need. Or, I'm thinking about livestock, we have ropes all over the place just in case we ever needed to tie a gate or get an animal. But we have all those things in very handy places. And also in buckets or carry totes where we can access them and move them around very quickly. And, that's just something that comes to mind is, if something were to happen this weekend, there's a few things we would need to do and be a little panicked. But in general, we'd be able to get all of our stuff together and we'd be ready to go.
Absolutely. What about you, Martha?
The thing I would want to tell them is, number one, stay calm and stay safe. And keep in mind our health. Do we have all of our medicine intact? Do we have our medical equipment? Do we have our food supply for at least 3 days? Do we have our documents? And are you informed? Do you know where to go if something happens?
Absolutely.
And just stay safe and stay calm, because if you have all of these checked off, you're in good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And my simple one is just be prepared.
And the other thing would be, for more information, call your University of Florida IFAS Extension Service.
Oh, absolutely. Reach out to your office, see what
Yes.
those county resources are and which ones are available for you. Where do you need to go in order to get certain items, documents, etc.? Because I know county by county that can be different, but always use us as a resource for you as part of that preparation.
And for the people in Alachua County that are used to us being over by the airport, we have moved, and we are now in our temporary new location in Jonesville.
Yep. So I want to thank you all for joining us today, and Martha and Amanda. It was a great conversation, and if anybody has any questions, just reach out to us. So thank you all.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
And if you're not prepared,
Get
start
prepared.
getting prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.